Is it true that the kinder you are, the more likely you are to be taken for granted? Have you ever wondered, why is it that I try to be a good person, treat others with sincerity, offer help without expecting anything in return? Yet all I receive is silence, indifference, even disrespect? You don't want to win or lose. You don't need anyone to repay you. All you wish is for others to appreciate the sincerity you have given so freely. But the more you give, the more invisible you seem to become in the very relationships you have nurtured wholeheartedly. The world seems to work in reverse. The cold-hearted are respected. The warm-hearted are exploited. You start to question yourself. Where did I go wrong? Is being a good person a mistake? Is there a way to remain kind without losing my dignity? Carl Jung once said, "No one can have a clear conscience without facing their own darkness." And in the journey of being kind, what truly hurts isn't kindness itself, but kindness without boundaries. In this article, we'll explore 6 profound psychological truths that explain why misguided kindness can lead to losing your self-worth, and how to protect yourself without losing your compassionate heart. 1. Kindness without boundaries is perceived as weakness. You may have once believed that as long as you live kindly and sincerely and help others without expecting anything in return, you'll receive love and respect. It's a beautiful belief, and unfortunately, it's also one of the reasons why many kind-hearted people end up hurt the most. In psychology, especially through Carl Jung's lens, human beings naturally test each other's boundaries. Not because everyone is malicious, but because our instinct is wired to seek out limits as a way of understanding how to relate to others. And when you always say yes, always show up when others need you, always offer help without asking for anything in return, you unintentionally send out a signal: I have no boundaries. This phenomenon is known as benevolence exploitation. The more someone is endlessly kind and never says no, the more others begin to see that kindness as a given. Instead of being appreciated, it becomes expected. And from there, your value in their eyes starts to diminish. Not because you're unworthy, but because your kindness is too easily accessible and thus loses its weight. Carl Jung once said, "No one can have a clear conscience without confronting their own shadow." The shadow here is not just the negative parts of us, but also the traits we've denied or suppressed: the ability to say no, the right to be assertive, and the instinct to protect ourselves. When you refuse to acknowledge the powerful parts within you, you unconsciously give others the license to cross your lines. In other words, limitless kindness is a rejection of personal power, and the world, whether intentionally or not, will respond in ways that force you to relearn this truth. So what's the solution? Not to become cold, selfish, or stop helping, but to establish boundaries with awareness. When you can say no calmly, when you respect your own time and emotions, others begin to feel the true value of your presence. Kindness, when rooted in inner strength and conscious clarity, will never be taken for granted. It becomes a powerful force that commands respect. And that's when you can remain kind without ever losing yourself in anyone's eyes. 2. Kindness reflects the insecurity in others. There's a hard truth that's difficult to accept but deeply important. Not everyone is ready to receive kindness. And sometimes your sincere goodness becomes a mirror that makes others uncomfortable. Carl Jung once said, "We do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are." This means that when you express kindness naturally, some people don't feel loved. They feel threatened. Why does this happen? Because your kindness is not just an act. It is a quiet reminder that there exists another way of living, one that isn't based on manipulation, control, or personal gain. And for those who have lived by the motto, "Defend first, trust later," your presence becomes a psychological threat. Deep in the unconscious, some have learned not to trust kindness. Perhaps their childhood or past experiences taught them, no one is kind without wanting something in return. So when you enter their life with pure, honest, uncalculated energy, they don't know what to do with it. Your sincerity stirs up something within them, a forgotten part that once knew how to love, how to trust, how to be soft. And because they're not ready to face those buried parts, They choose the simpler path, to dismiss you, mock you, distance themselves, not because there is something wrong with you, but because your presence disrupts the mental walls they've spent a lifetime building. In-depth psychology is known as projection and reflection. They do not see you as you are. They see the unhealed insecurities, fears, and wounds within themselves and unconsciously project those onto you. This leads to unjustified suspicion, unwarranted distance, or negative reactions that are completely disproportionate to your behavior. So what should you do? Don't change your kindness, but stop expecting everyone to be ready for it. Understand that their reactions say more about them than they do about you. Protect your energy. Step away from those who use doubt as a weapon to deny your sincerity. Kindness is never a problem, but when it reflects someone's shadow too clearly, they will resist it until they are mature enough to face themselves. 3. Kindness goes against the norms of a competitive society. In a world where success is often measured by speed, efficiency, and the ability to beat others, kindness, especially unconditional kindness, is often seen as out of place. Have you ever heard things like, if you're too nice, people will take advantage of you? This world isn't made for gentle souls. You've got to think of yourself first. These aren't just practical pieces of advice. They reflect a deeply rooted ideology of silent competition, one that has shaped the mindset of generations. In such a framework, kindness is no longer seen as a noble instinct, but as a failing strategy. According to Carl Jung, much of human suffering comes from living out of alignment with one's true nature, to chase after social models that have been imposed. So if you're someone who chooses kindness, who chooses authenticity, you are, consciously or not, challenging those imposed models. Because when you help without calculation, when you choose gentleness over aggression, when you stay calm instead of retaliating, you send a quiet but powerful message. It's possible to live differently from the crowd. Ruthlessness isn't the only way to survive. Not everyone plays by the rules of power and domination. And that makes some people uncomfortable. They see you as an anomaly in a system built on competition. So they mock you, distance themselves, or look down on you, not because you're wrong, but because your presence challenges their old beliefs. Kindness is not a sign of weakness. It is a conscious choice that even in a harsh world, you still choose to remain clear, compassionate, and human. And that requires far more courage than simply conforming. If you've ever felt alone on the path of kindness, remember this: you are not alone. You are not out of place. You're simply ahead of your time, and that makes you rare. Don't trade your values just to fit in. Kindness is not a product waiting for approval. It's a light that needs you to keep it alive, even when the world hasn't yet learned how to see it. 4. Generosity misunderstood as responsibility. Have you ever found yourself in this situation? You help someone once, they're grateful. You help a second time, they're happy. But by the third, fourth, or fifth time, the gratitude fades. In its place, expectation. And if one day you can't help them anymore, suddenly you become the one who's changed, difficult, or even uncaring. Why does this happen? The answer lies in a very common psychological mechanism: the familiarity effect. When something is given regularly and unconditionally, the receiver begins to see it as normal. When you always show up, always help, always listen, you are no longer seen as special. You become a kind of invisible support system that people believe will always be there, and over time, your generosity is no longer seen as a gift, but as an obligation. Your presence becomes expected, not appreciated. According to Carl Jung, when a positive quality is not balanced by awareness and boundaries, it slips into the shadow, becoming a burden. In this case, unlimited generosity turns you into an emotional servant, rather than a person with your own values and needs. You can be someone who shows up, but you are not an infinite supply line. And if you don't set boundaries, you are the one teaching others that. You never get tired. You don't have personal needs. You don't need care in return. And that's when you begin to fade into the background, invisible to the very people you once supported. The truth is, kindness doesn't mean always saying yes. Kindness also includes the ability to say no, clearly, calmly, to protect your spirit from being drained. The more you know your limits, the more others will cherish the moments you choose to open your heart. And that is what keeps the value of your generosity intact. Don't be afraid of disappointing others. Their disappointment is temporary. But your internal exhaustion? That is far more dangerous in the long run. Remember, you have the right to help, but no one has the right to make you responsible for their happiness. 5. Excessive kindness becomes invisible. There is a strange paradox in human psychology. Anything that appears too frequently, too easily, tends to be devalued. Even kindness. The more generous, available, and kind you are, the more people will initially appreciate you. But over time, that same kindness stops being seen as a gift and becomes expected. And when kindness becomes a default, it gradually loses its emotional value in the eyes of others. This isn't because people are bad, and it's because the human mind operates under the familiarity, boredom, neglect effect. It's like the sound of a ceiling fan. At first, you notice it, but eventually it fades into the background of your awareness. In the same way, a person who constantly gives without pause will eventually blend into the emotional wallpaper, taken for granted. Carl Jung once warned, any quality, even a radiant light, if not made conscious, will fall into the shadow. This means that when you give without awareness, your own kindness will begin to erase you. A person who always helps without boundaries will eventually be seen as someone who is optional. Nice to have, but easy to ignore. And the painful truth is, the more generous you are, the more easily you may be forgotten. Why? Because once your kindness becomes a free resource, people stop assessing its true value. And that's when disrespect quietly starts to creep in. No one will say it aloud, but you'll feel it. The thank yous become rarer. Their expectations of you grow heavier. And if one day you say no, you're seen as the one who changed. In Eastern philosophy, there is a concept known as unconscious merit, doing good without understanding what you are really giving. When kindness becomes unconscious self-sacrifice, it becomes easy to exploit. So how do you keep your light from dimming? Learn to set limits, choose consciously, give with intention, not to become calculating, but so that every act of kindness retains its meaning, so that when you are kind, they know. You didn't have to, you chose to. 6. Saying no is a form of emotional intelligence. We are often taught that being kind means always saying yes, always being available, always being helpful. But the truth is, the ability to say no at the right time, in the right way, is the highest form of mature kindness. And more importantly, it is a clear expression of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is not just about understanding others' emotions, but about recognizing your own, protecting your inner boundaries, and expressing your truth without causing unnecessary harm. Among all the emotional skills, saying no is one of the most essential and one of the hardest, especially for kind-hearted people. Why? Because we fear making others upset. We fear being judged as selfish. We fear losing love and approval. Yet paradoxically, in constantly trying to please others, we lose connection with ourselves. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. And this is especially true in relationships. When you're focused solely on pleasing others, you forget to listen to your own inner voice. Kind people often confuse refusing with betraying, but in reality, saying no is how you protect your energy, your dignity, and your emotional boundaries. When you keep saying yes while your heart is saying and no, you will gradually lose touch with yourself, harbor silent resentment, and over time, your kindness will turn into bitterness. It's not that people leave you because you said no. They leave because they became addicted to your yes. The moment you start saying no, you'll see who truly respects you and who simply used your kindness as a convenience. Saying no is your way of telling the world, I have feelings, I have needs, I have limits, and those who truly love you, they will understand and honor that. So instead of fearing rejection, learn to say no with grace and clarity. I understand what you need, but I can't this time. I care about you, but I also need time for myself. I'm not doing this because I don't have the energy right now. Kindness isn't about constant compliance. It's about knowing where to stop. And the day you can say no without guilt is the day you step into emotional maturity. According to Carl Jung, within each of us exists a light that longs to give and a shadow that longs to be protected. The wise do not abandon their light, but they also do not forget their shadow. They know when to give and when to hold back. They know the difference between kindness and dangerous compromise. Personally, I believe this. Kindness is an art, but to sustain that art, you must cultivate its twin virtue, clarity. Not everyone deserves the energy you offer. Not every place is fertile ground for the seeds of your compassion. And you don't have to exhaust yourself being the one who's always right in other people's eyes. You just need to be conscious enough to stop being the one who always endures. The final message is this: don't trade your kindness for silence, suffering, or self-destruction. Learn to say no to intrusion while still saying yes to compassion. Because when you begin setting boundaries around your kindness, the world will begin to respect you in the way you've always hoped. If you've ever felt overlooked or taken for granted because of your kindness, feel free to share your experience below, because your story might give strength to someone who's still suffering in silence. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel to continue receiving insightful content on psychology, selfhood, and the journey of awakening.